my pleasure today to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Jahan Marcu. Dr. Jahan Marcu received his PhD, and me too, from Temple University School of Medicine in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology. In fact, Jahan did neuroscience and I did cardiovascular biology at Temple University School of Medicine. Wonderful days. After that, we took very different paths. Jahan got into a lot of different stuff, which he already used to do while in grad school. And I got into postdoc for years, and then I got into this position. But Jahan has been very successful, and he's become a world authority in cannabis research. And he's highly published, and and he's invited to serve on many different committees, which I'll talk about in a few. Jahan was invited to all the possible news networks, podcasts, TV shows, where he was invited to talk about his research and see how that plays into the bigger discussion about legalizing cannabis in United States. At that time, this was still in infantile stages, the discussion. So Jahan has 15 years of experience in cannabinoid research, policy, and operations. He's been a passionate advocate focused on consumer safety and medical benefits of cannabis. He's also among the select group of professionals globally that has earned PhD focus on endocannabinoid system with research on structure and function of cannabinoid receptors, molecular pharmacology of endocannabinoid system, and the role of ECS in the bone. So he's currently serving as the editor-in-chief of American Journal of Endocannabinoid Medicine and is also the co-founder and former chief science officer for the International Research Center on Cannabis and Health, also known as Institute of Cannabis Research. Additionally, he's a founder and past chair of Cannabis Chemistry Subdivision of American Chemical Society, which is the world's largest and oldest professional scientific society. Further illustrating the recognition earned through his efforts, he's been asked to serve on multiple expert government advisory and trade association committees, as well as the scientific organizations, including ASTM, which Jahan is going to explain in a bit, Cannabis Committee, ACS Cannabis Chemistry Subdivision, and IMCPC, which Jahan, you're going to have to expand that for me later. Jahan has been He's also the court-qualified synthetic cannabinoid and cannabis expert. His work has been published and covered in publications such as Science, Nature, Journal of Medical Association, the Washington Post, CNN, and many other media outlets. So welcome, Jahan, and we are really excited and looking forward to listening to your career journey and all the advice you have to offer to our students and postdocs who are interested in either careers like yours or ending up in careers which are relevant to science, the research they are doing right now. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Harinder. That was a very thorough and very gracious introduction. This, again, I just want to reinforce, this is an interactive presentation. I just have a few slides here to kind of frame our discussion. And after that, please keep the questions coming by chat. And then at the end, feel free to unmute your mics and just ask questions. I'm here for your benefit. So please try, feel free to make the most of it. So today, I'm going to talk to you about a journey from the lab bench to creating your own research businesses. And also this interesting journey I've been on the last couple of years of creating a research journal. So as Harinder mentioned, I've been doing a lot of stuff, and he covered a lot of these points already. And the point of putting this slide in here is not just to brag about myself, but I wanted to show you what I put in presentations when I go out to industry settings and professional settings, and when I'm putting together a pitch deck to get a project funded. Before I talk, I always put in a bio slide. If I'm going to academia, like this audience, if I was giving a departmental talk, I wouldn't include this slide. But for industry, you have to always reestablish yourself with every audience, your expertise. And sometimes it's good to put everything on there. Sometimes you want to be more selective. But I think some of the most important things is we'll talk about is how to be specialized and the advantages of being specialized. This started, I think, Harinder probably remembers some of this stuff, like Dr. Rawls and these other researchers. They didn't know my name. They just called me Mr. Cannabinoid. But they knew to come look for Mr. Cannabinoid, the guy who was obsessed with cannabinoid receptors, to ask about research projects. And that has led to a lot of opportunities. ASTM is a standards and technology group that has existed for over 100 years in the United States, and they create a lot of industry standards for products and safety stuff. And they're working on cannabis standards. I was part of the committee that created their cannabis committee, and was a chair of one of the standards committees for a while. A lot of these things, they don't pay. It's a volunteer position. So while they can lead to great things, you have to balance where you're spending your time and what projects you're working on. I used to be a chair at APA, the American Herbal Products Association, and we created the first safety standards for the cannabis industry that were adopted in over a dozen states. And this, in California state law, I actually used to cite a document I was an author of, the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia, as the standard for safety testing for cannabis. So there's been a lot of volunteer work with the right organizations can lead to some terrific opportunities. I know that's a bit of alphabet soup here, but I have cycled in and out of these different groups: associations for cannabinoids as medicine, medical cannabis patient coalitions, IMCPC. I was an advisor for a while to the International Cannabis and Cannabinoid Institute, and trying different things and seeing what works and projects that work. So I don't need to spend too much more time on that because I want to get to some examples of things. So you have a PhD right now. We're we're living in very interesting times. I don't know what to say about the environment that you're facing, but when I was looking at getting a postdoc in 2013, we had a sequester and there was no new research funding. And so one by one, all those postdoc opportunities that people had invited me to at the University of Mississippi to work with their cannabis cultivation and natural products research center, that was gone. They had no funding. Forget any UC, forget all that. And I had to really think on my feet. And luckily in graduate school, I had already started to experiment with doing consulting, advising, reaching out for those projects. And so right out of grad school, as the senator said, I was very good at networking. I had a blog where I posted my ideas about research, just whatever I thought about. Study would come out and people started reading that. And I don't care what you're studying. And one of the things I'm going to really focus on is be specialized. Like if you study some random brain receptor, it doesn't matter what it is. Say you're it'd be great if you're an ACE2 receptor specialist right now. You'd have no shortage of work. So again, being specialized led to a lot of these opportunities because I was focused on a particular field. The first kind of thing out of grad school was called Green Standard Diagnostics, and we wanted to open up a chain of laboratories. But there were no laws that required product testing. That is, you could sell cannabis to a medical patient without any testing done on it for mold, bacteria, or potency. Sounds crazy today. So we had to reformulate what we were doing because there was not a market for testing of cannabis products at the time. So we started working and investing our money in changing the laws, working with standards groups so that there would be a market for this. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and I moved on to the next thing. Went into the nonprofit world, and I worked on international standards programs. I started doing more work in regulations. I did stuff at the United Nations, education stuff mostly. Started doing more doctor education. In the nonprofit sector, I started getting more into training, certifications, business trainings, patient education, really kind of everything for the cannabis industry. And then after all that time, I met a colleague at a conference and we had a discussion and decided to apply for a grant with NYU. And this is years after grad school. And we got a center grant from NYU to fund a center for about a year or two. And we created the International Research Center on cannabis and health. And so my point is that you have a window after grad school where you can try out industry. You can try out these ideas. Because 2 years after grad school, guess what? You can still get a KO1 award. You can still get these career advancing awards. Many of them are available to young investigators 3 to 5 years after you get a PhD. So don't like right after grad school, it's a great time, in my opinion, to try something new before you go to the postdoc. You'll pick up new skills. Some things I wish I had done differently in grad school um, would be have taken some business classes. You know, as a grad student, there are programs at most universities where you can get an MBA taking night classes. I don't know if I would have completed the MBA, but every day I think those business classes and being able to speak the language of business would have been very, very helpful. I hate business. I hate sales. I avoided it like the plague my whole life, but I need those skills now. And now I'm taking online classes to educate myself. Academia, you know, I am in and out of academia all the time. And it's great because you want to be free to do different things, but you also want to do research collaborations. But because of my mixed background, it has provided me a lot of flexibility. You know, part of the reason I got a publication in JAMA about CBD was about the labeling accuracy of CBD products was not because I was at academia. I was the guy who had the connections in the industry and knew where the good labs were. I had insight that the academics were missing to make this study good. So again, that's a really important aspect. Regulatory stuff, oh man, there's such a need for scientists. I want to, you know, here's a fun fact. Name one person with a science degree that is an elected official. Tough, right? We don't know any. Name one that has a PhD. There are zero. Why? Because you cannot work for the government and have federal funds at the same time. So if you're a funded PhD researcher, you can't serve in office because of the conflict between. I know it's a little hooky, but I'm just wanting these concepts to get in your mind is science and data drive our policy. And if you're not there to talk about it, it's going to be filled with not science and not data. So again, thinking about that. Consulting, advising, freelancing, there's a lot of opportunities everywhere in pharma, small businesses. There's so much stuff out there. I can tell you, just having a PhD and you want to do science writing, you have an advantage over every other science journalist in the country. You understand the stuff already. So you can make a lot more money doing blogs. I mean, I was making $300 a blog post out of grad school, you know, because I had a PhD and it just weighted more than people writing about cannabis that had no scientific training. So again, it doesn't really matter. You could be studying diabetes. It's the same principles apply. Societies, associations, professional organizations. I've belonged to a lot of them over the years, and I've slowly cycled in and out of ones that really are right for me. So find those good fits and try those different societies. And again, you know, in the United States, when it comes to healthcare, there's a shortage of consumer protections and safety for everything, for really everything. And so this is a great way to get involved with, you know, that the FDA is always looking for people to be involved with those reviews. It's competitive to get in there, but there is a huge need with people with diverse backgrounds. So one of the things I really want to talk about is, you know, so you might see me out there. If you search my name on the internet, you'll find a lot of stuff I'm involved with. So how did I make these things happen? Was it was it a hack? Was it a special trick I used? No, you know, there's a very stupid joke I think of all the time, right? A young man is walking down the street in New York with a violin in his hand, and he asks an old person sitting down, says, "Excuse me, do you know how I can get to Carnegie Hall?" And the old man says, "Sure I do. Practice." So whatever you're doing, whatever you practice most, you'll get better at. Whatever you practice least, you get worse at. So there are perishable skills. I read and write every day. Even when I'm not feeling good, I'll read a bunch of abstracts. It's so important to stay sharp. Communication, the ability to write science clearly, and being able to analyze and interpret results and apply them is probably on equal plane as generating that data. You know, there's no shortage of publications out there, right? But where's the understanding and application of those? So I've taken a lot of science and journalism. I crashed a journalism course in college just to get the experience, just to get the feedback on my writing, just to fine tune my writing. Like I said, I've had blogs in the past. I've written for a variety of different types of publications, not just peer review, for small newspapers, for different websites, for Project CBD. Um, and one thing I've learned is you need someone to edit your stuff. You know, I send everything I write before I publish it. I send it to a couple friends and say, give me your feedback. You know, and I do this all the time. People call me a masochist because I like really look for the constructive criticism, people to tell me what to fix. And I don't, you know, I don't take everyone's advice. Everyone has something to offer. You don't do every change that people tell you to do, but you weight it and you analyze it. But again, communication. I can't stress this enough. Like, take communication classes, get media training. Just really, this is the most important thing. If you cannot communicate your results to different audiences, it's over. So really, 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 this is the most important skill as a scientist, and it takes practice. How do you practice this skill? There's 100 ways to do it. One thing that Harinder may or may not remember, but I did something in grad school, two things to prepare for my thesis defense leading up to it. I went to comedy clubs and performed open mic stuff, told stupid science jokes to get comfortable in front of the audience. So when it came time for my thesis, I was like, man, nothing's going to be as bad as that night I bombed at that club. Like, it was easy, you know, it was much easier. The other thing is before I defended my thesis, I reached out to my network. I contacted half a dozen doctors and researchers and said, I want to practice my thesis presentation by Skype. Will you watch it? And they did. And one of them, thank God, stayed on afterwards and walked me through my presentation and really helped me fine it, tune it, and sharpen it. And these are strategies that you can use. Again, I know most of you may be looking at a thesis defense. Who are the 5 people you'd want to practice with? I practiced in front of our journal club at Temple. The more you practice it, the better it gets. And I got to tell you, the first question at the end of my thesis defense from my committee member was, thank you for a great presentation. I think more students could learn from what you did here today. And it wasn't that it was easy for me. It was a lot of painful practice and repetition. Practice, put in the hours, put in the time, and it is so worth it. If you can write an article and put together a presentation in 30 minutes instead of 3 hours, you've just saved yourself a whole bunch of time. Analysis, you know, don't focus so much if you're thinking about getting in science writing and communications, don't focus so much on breaking news and the study just came out. What's more valuable is helping people understand it than just letting them know it's there. Everyone does it. Millions of people are posting, hey, look at this study. Look, well, what does the study mean? Does it impact my life? Is it just clickbait? And again, think about, people always talk about what fundamental skills and perishable skills, like, I had to give a talk, you know, on a subject once, and I had to learn it before the talk because it wasn't the thing I was familiar with. And one of my mentors said, you're probably going to forget it on the flight back. She was right. I did forget it. You know, so, you know, I didn't maintain it, you know, so there's a lot of perishable skills that you want to practice and really be good at. And the best advice I've ever gotten in my whole life was when I was an undergrad and working in my first lab position. I was very excited about everything in research. It's like this world was opening up to me, and I would just say what was ever on my mind and, you know, try to make claims and these huge, like a little grasshopper making huge leaps to the next plant. And my boss just said to me, you know, Jahan, no one cares what you think. Just, you know, quote other people and you'll be fine. Like, what who are, you know, and that was such a powerful tool because it allowed me to talk about cannabis legalization and medical cannabis. It's not me saying it, it's the head of oncology at this hospital. It's not me saying it, it's this team of researchers at a university. I'm just the messenger. So again, try to avoid your opinion and quote the literature as much as possible for your field. This is such a powerful way to convey a message. And, you know, let's face it, the published literature has more credibility than any individual. Just to drive that point home. You know, I think it's also, you know, with your network, stay in touch. They just schedule calls to catch up with people I haven't spoken with in a while, see what they're up to. And again, there are huge advantages to specialized. Again, I'm going to stress again, not a lot of people knew my name within my research department or in school. Outside the school, people knew who I was, blogs and news articles. But within my own research world, I was just known as Mr. Cannabinoid before I had a PhD. Stick to the fundamentals about the, like, don't try to overread. Really, if you master the fundamental communication, data analysis, and writing, you'll blow most people out of the water. But also what's really important is to not just enjoy the product of your work, to enjoy the process. Part of the reason I'm successful is because I just love what I do. So it's very difficult to find, but if you do that, it'll be very helpful. And one of the other things before I move on a little bit is to be successful in any endeavor, you have to have the support from your friends and family. If you don't have that, you're not going to get very far because you're going to have to take risks. There are going to be a lot of long nights and a lot of early mornings to get things done. And you're going to need a support network. If your partner doesn't support what you're doing, you cannot build on that. So again, it's very important to have support from your friends and your family for these endeavors. And so again, just some simple keys to success. Be specialized, be passionate and persistent in what you're interested in. Really, really understand how to communicate, writing, learn how to give presentations to a wide variety of groups. Universal appeal. If you had to give a group to, presentation to 1,000 people of all different backgrounds, how would you present your data? Learn to use criticism. Don't get insulted and like ego trip because someone doesn't like something. Really try to listen and see what's useful from that. Learning how to use criticism has been the most important thing and is really what is set. I have an article in Nature. I can tell you that was a vicious battle with their editor, back and forth with that article. I mean, but I really tried to listen to what he was trying to say to shape that article. And you know what? I listened to him. I applied what I thought was useful, discarded the rest, and it made it finally through peer review. Submit different types of articles to different publications. You will learn something new about the process. I can't stress that enough. It's very, very helpful when you have to write about your research in layman's terms so that people can understand it. Resume building, I mentioned this already. Keep track. Harinder had some great advice for me is every 6 months or at the end of every year, go back through and write down all the conferences, trainings, extra education, certificates that you've achieved, put them in your resume because someday someone will ask for them and you'll either have it or you won't. And again, smile, ask questions, and remember people. Really, really, really. People respect you more if you ask questions. People, are flattered by it, so don't be afraid to ask questions. It shows you're interested. It shows you're thinking. It shows you might want to work with that person. So I try to, every time I attend a talk and it's about a topic I like, I try to ask a question, even if it's a stupid question like, hey, I saw you had your dog in the photo. Tell us about your dog. If I, just to give an example, it can be anything. Just get your question out there and engage. So this is wrapping up the slides before we go to Q&A. I want you guys to learn and participate in science, Tory science. I write and commentaries to federal, to this organization, to this publication. I do not do it alone. I do it with teams of people or organizations. If you're looking for a very safe group to work with, AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, they're probably lobbying right now to increase research funding. Get experience in working in this capacity because it is can be very fruitful and can be very great for your career. And furthermore, I know I've had an unstable internet connection. It's the times we live in. But if you're interested in working in science communications, you want to publish, contact me. I'm happy. If you're of Harinder, I'll waive my $100 an hour fee for you. Everyone gets 1 free hour. And let's talk it out, because I know someone in my network who can help you. I might have some good advice to share. Just again to show you, this is the organizations I've written for, worked with, interviewed. At every one of these organizations, I've either been interviewed someone through my network, them at a conference, or engage with them on social media. Be nice to people, ask questions, because you never know which one reporter, and things like that. But it's been really a lot more fruit than I thought. Not going and that doing a would be. I thought I'd just be a year in the industry, but I've never really looked back on the postdoc. Every now and then I think, oh, it would have been nice, but really it was not needed. So again, this is the journal, the American Journal of Endocannabinoid Medicine. I had some people who continue to help me and offer me support. Always important to acknowledge those people in every presentation. And again, these are just the last 2 issues of the journal, and I'm happy to pause here and take any questions, comments, anything you guys would like.
Great. Thank you, Jahan. Thanks for sharing your career journey.